Carl Jung pinpointed 8 characteristics of an extraordinarily uncommon personality structure. And should you identify with even 4 of these qualities, you belong to what I term the consciousness vanguard. Through his extensive years of investigation, Jung uncovered that fewer than 5% of humanity cultivates what he described as evolved awareness, a method of perceiving existence that the majority never attain. Yet here's the compelling part. These uncommon individuals frequently spend their complete existence believing something is fundamentally wrong with them. Jung recorded instance after instance of persons possessing remarkable psychological complexity who had been persuaded by cultural norms that their profundity, their perceptiveness, their unwillingness to embrace superficial explanations were personality defects instead of markers of remarkable mental advancement. The most astonishing aspect, Jung recognized these uncommon personalities aren't merely distinctive, they're evolutionarily progressive. They embody humanity's subsequent phase of awareness evolution. Accompany me as we explore the dimensions of Jungian theory to reveal these 8 conclusive indicators of uncommon personality structures. Should you recognize yourself within these configurations, everything you've been informed about being excessive will ultimately become clear because you're not excessive for existence. Existence is insufficient for you. Because here's what Jung uncovered that contemporary psychology continues to disregard. The qualities that generate feelings of alienation aren't imperfections. They're enhancements. You're not damaged, you're pioneering. But before we continue, please like this video, share it with people who might appreciate it, and write in the comments which city you're watching our YouTube channel from. Jung articulated, "The honor of existence is becoming your authentic self." Yet what occurs when your authentic self doesn't conform to culture's limited parameters of conventional? What occurs when your profundity, your complexity, your rejection of superficial existence constitute proof of what I term sophisticated psychological design? Consider this from an evolutionary viewpoint. Throughout time, the persons who advanced humanity were those who couldn't embrace the existing order. They were those who challenged everything, experienced everything, and perceived opportunities that others couldn't even conceive. Yet here's the heartbreaking contradiction. Culture instructs these remarkable persons to repress their most powerful attributes. You've likely been informed you're excessively perceptive, excessively profound, or excessively intricate. Yet Jung comprehended that these presumed imperfections are genuinely indicators of what he termed psychological evolution, the uncommon capacity to detect and interpret existence at dimensions most persons never cultivate. Contemporary brain science is ultimately validating Jung's understandings. Dr. Elaine Aron's investigation into highly perceptive persons demonstrates that roughly 20% of humanity possesses neural systems that interpret sensory data more comprehensively. Yet Jung identified something even more uncommon. Persons whose complete psychological framework functions at a sophisticated dimension. Yet that's not the most remarkable aspect. The most remarkable aspect is that these uncommon personalities frequently conceal their capacities because they've been instructed to perceive them as limitations. You've discovered to reduce your brilliance because others discover it intimidating. Allow me to disclose the initial indicator of what I term psychological uncommonness. Indicator 1. You experience emotional complexity that seems almost otherworldly. Jung uncovered something extraordinary regarding emotional profundity. He discovered that particular persons don't simply experience emotions. They undergo what he termed emotionally charged constructs that generate significant psychological resonance. You don't simply possess sentiments. Sentiments flow through you like orchestrations, each one transporting dimensions of significance that others cannot reach. Here's what Jung grasped that most practitioners overlook. This isn't emotional volatility. It's emotional advancement. When you experience profoundly, you're not overreacting. You're reaching what Jung termed the collective unconscious, dimensions of human existence that most persons have discovered to repress. You perceive the unspoken strain in spaces before anyone articulates a syllable. You transport the emotional subtexts of every exchange because your consciousness is configured for complexity, not superficial courtesies. Jung articulated, everything that troubles us regarding others can guide us to comprehension of ourselves. Yet for you, everything reveals pathways to comprehension that others cannot even perceive. Indicator 2. You challenge existence with what I term divine inquisitiveness. According to Jung, most persons exist what he termed unaware existences. They embrace cultural conditioning without investigation. Yet you cannot resist exploring further. Jung would have identified you as someone possessing an engaged cognitive capacity that rejects accepting superficial clarifications. You don't simply inquire what, you inquire why. Why do persons remain in connections that reduce them? Why do we embrace structures that don't support human prosperity? Why do we simulate that superficial dialogues represent substantial relationship? Jung termed this the integrative capacity, the psychological capability to perceive beyond present restrictions. While others embrace the existing order, you're already conceiving what could be alternative, what could be more genuine, what could respect the complete range of human capability. Yet here's what I've uncovered regarding persons like you. Your inquiries threaten others' secure delusions. When you pose complex inquiries, you're not simply pursuing responses. You're challenging the psychological protections that maintain persons experiencing secure in their restrictions. Should you've ever been informed, you inquire excessively many inquiries or contemplate excessively profoundly regarding matters. Comment: my inquisitiveness is divine. Indicator 3. You've cultivated what I term aware self-reliance. Jung stated, the most frightening matter is accepting oneself totally. You've discovered to accomplish precisely this, not through selection, but through psychological requirement. According to Jung's investigation, uncommon personalities frequently cultivate what he termed individualized awareness earlier than others, typically through hardship. Here's what Jung comprehended that most persons overlook. Your self-reliance isn't a protective response. It's an accomplishment. You've discovered through existence that relying on others for your perception of value is psychological instability. Therefore, you constructed yourself from fundamentals. You arose, frequently solitary, and generated an identity that couldn't be removed by someone else's judgment or departure. Jung termed this procedure individuation the psychological expedition toward becoming complete. Most persons never finalize this expedition because it demands confronting what Jung designated the shadow. All the aspects of yourself you've been instructed to dismiss. Your solitude isn't isolation. It's refuge. It's where you recall who you are underneath all the performances and anticipations. Jung maintained this self-awareness is the basis of all psychological wellness. Indicator 4. You possess what I term hyper-aware perception. Jung transformed psychology when he identified intuition as an authentic psychological capacity. He stated, intuition is detection via the unconscious that produces concepts, visions, opportunities, solutions from a restricted circumstance through a procedure that is predominantly unconscious. You don't simply monitor persons. You interpret their psychological characteristics. You observe minute reactions, vitality transitions, the expressions they don't articulate. Jung would have identified this as proof of what he termed engaged imagination, the capability to detect beyond the apparent. When someone articulates their acceptable, yet their complete energetic presence communicates distress, you cannot overlook it. When there's strain in a space that everyone else appears to disregard, you experience it fundamentally. This isn't suspicion. It's psychological perceptiveness functioning at a dimension that most persons never cultivate. Yet Jung cautioned that should you not discover to safeguard this perceptiveness, it will deplete you. You conclude becoming an unconscious healer for everyone surrounding you, moderating dialogues and transporting suffering that isn't yours to transport. Indicator 5. You desire significance over everything else. Jung monitored, the honor of existence is becoming your authentic self. Yet what occurs when being authentic to yourself signifies rejecting everything culture informs you to desire? Jung uncovered that particular personalities are psychologically unable of existing inauthentic existences. You don't select significance over acceptance. Your consciousness requires it. You've likely attempted existing for external approval, pursuing scripts, performing anticipated performances. Yet Jung would have identified the manifestations instantly. That aware vacancy, that perception of betraying something fundamental, that silent desperation underneath any recognition. According to Jung, when you exist against your psychological structure, you don't simply experience uncomfortable. You cultivate what he termed neurotic manifestations. Your consciousness genuinely revolts against inauthenticity. You cannot simulate that superficial objectives matter. You cannot become enthusiastic regarding accomplishments that absent substance. You cannot construct connections based on convenience instead of relationship. Your psychological composition won't permit it. Yet Jung identified something extraordinary regarding persons who emphasize significance. They become what I term evolutionary stimulants for human awareness. When you reject settling for less than genuine relationship, you compel others to address their own inauthenticity. Indicator 6. You've transcended persons and circumstances repeatedly. Jung stated, "The most significant misfortune of the household is the unlived existences of the guardians." Yet what occurs when you reject existing and unlived existence? Jung uncovered something significant regarding psychological expansion. It's frequently a solitary expedition. You've probably encountered the distressing comprehension that persons who previously understood you don't currently. Not because you've become challenging, yet because you've released dimensions of conditioning that no longer support you. Jung termed this procedure psychological termination and regeneration. The companions who understood you when you were contracting, when you were accommodating, when you were repressing your authenticity, they recall that interpretation of you. Occasionally they desire that interpretation returned because it experienced more secure, more foreseeable. Yet you cannot return. Jung comprehended that psychological advancement is permanent. Once you've perceived behind the facade of cultural conditioning, you cannot restore to unconscious compliance. Should persons appear uncomfortable with your expansion and maintain requesting you to be who you previously were, comment, "My advancement is not discussable." Indicator 7. You generate what I term transformative existence. Jung stated, "The encounter of two personalities is comparable to the interaction of two chemical elements. Should there be any response, both are transformed." Yet what occurs when you're the category of person who generates transformation simply by appearing genuinely? Jung identified an uncommon quality that some persons possess, the capability to generate what he termed psychological containing environment. When someone communicates to you, they experience perceived in a manner that's exceptional. You don't simply attend to expressions. You detect fundamental emotional conditions. You don't present immediate solutions. You present comprehensive witnessing. You don't accelerate to criticism. You generate environment for authenticity to surface. Jung comprehended that this dimension of existence is genuinely a configuration of psychological restoration. Yet here's what I've monitored regarding persons possessing this capacity. They frequently deplete themselves by presenting it excessively freely. You become so proficient at containing environment for others that you disregard to request environment to be contained yourself. Jung uncovered something significant regarding highly compassionate personalities. They frequently cultivate what I term supporter pattern, a configuration of unconscious self-denial that ultimately supports no one. The assignment isn't to discontinue caring. The assignment is discovering discrimination. Indicator 8. You perceive a function that cannot be specified yet. Jung stated, "Your perception becomes transparent when you investigate your center. Who investigates externally fantasizes. Who investigates internally awakens." Should you experience a continuous perception that you're intended for something beyond the conventional, Jung would have identified this as what he termed the integrative capacity. Your consciousness's impulse toward individuation and function. You experience it. That restless awareness that you possess something to provide, something to construct, something to communicate. It might not be transparent yet it's undeniable. Jung comprehended this as proof of what he termed creative capability pursuing communication. This isn't regarding recognition or acknowledgement. It's regarding coordination, the psychological requirement of existing in balance with your most fundamental character. Jung discovered that persons who disregard this summons frequently cultivate neurotic manifestations. Concern, melancholy, a perception of purposelessness. Yet here's Jung's most significant understanding regarding function-oriented personalities. Your summons isn't simply individual. It's collective. You're not simply here to satisfy yourself. You're here to support the advancement of awareness itself. Jung devoted his complete profession investigating personalities like yours. He termed persons possessing these qualities what I designate the evolved persons. Those who have cultivated psychological intricacy that permits them to perceive, experience, and comprehend at dimensions most persons never achieve. Yet Jung also identified the phases of cultivation for uncommon personalities. Comprehending where you are within this procedure is essential for your continued expansion. Phase 1. The unconscious alienated. You experience distinctive yet don't comprehend why. You undergo the qualities yet perceive them as difficulties to be corrected instead of capacities to be cultivated. You attempt to comply to integrate to be conventional. Yet the psychological pressure is tremendous. Jung monitored that persons in this phase frequently cultivate what he termed persona inflexibility. They become so concentrated on appearing conventional that they forfeit connection with their genuine selves. Phase 2. The awakening person. You commence to identify your qualities as potentially beneficial instead of difficult. You initiate to comprehend Jung's notion of psychological structures and perceive where you integrate. You commence the procedure of what Jung termed shadow incorporation, claiming the aspects of yourself you've been instructed to dismiss. This is where you discontinue apologizing for your complexity and initiate claiming it. You commence to establish limitations with persons who desire to reduce your brilliance. You initiate pursuing others who can correspond your dimension of genuineness. Phase 3. The individualized awareness. You completely incorporated your uncommon qualities into a unified identity. You comprehend your function and exist it deliberately. You've cultivated what Jung termed psychological completeness, the capability to be genuinely yourself while remaining associated to others. At this phase, you become what I term a signal for other uncommon souls. You don't simply exist genuinely. You present others authorization to accomplish the same. You become a stimulant for collective awareness advancement. Should you're prepared to discontinue concealing your uncommon qualities and initiate claiming them totally, comment, I am psychologically uncommon and honored. Yet Jung cautioned regarding something essential that most persons possessing uncommon personalities never discover. You must incorporate your shadow or your capacities become your confinement. What do I signify by this? Even uncommon personalities possess unconscious dimensions that can undermine their expansion. Jung identified several shadow configurations typical to psychologically sophisticated persons. The dominance construct shadow. You commence to perceive your uncommonness as proof that you're superior than others instead of simply distinctive. This guides to separation and conceit. The savior shadow. You become persuaded that it's your responsibility to awaken or restore everyone surrounding you. This guides to exhaustion and bitterness when others don't value your attempts. The sacrifice shadow. You commence to maintain that being uncommon signifies being intended to experience. That your complexity demands sacrifice of contentment or relationship. Jung comprehended that shadow incorporation is fundamental for psychological wellness. The objective isn't to remove these inclinations, yet to render them aware so they don't unconsciously regulate your conduct. Authentic psychological uncommonness incorporates the intelligence to recognize when to distribute your capacities and when to maintain them, when to guide and when to pursue, when to articulate authenticity, and when to remain silent. Jung produced a significant monitoring regarding uncommon personalities in connections. They either attract persons who desire to claim their brilliance or persons who are intimidated by it. Comprehending this configuration is essential for constructing genuine relationships. The brilliance pursuers. These are persons who are unconsciously attracted to your vitality yet haven't accomplished their own internal assignment. They desire you to be their healer, their instructor, their source of significance. They appreciate your capacities yet not necessarily you as a total person. The brilliance reducer. These are persons who experience intimidated by your profundity and continuously attempt to acquire you to moderate, be more logical, or discontinue generating everything so intricate. They're frequently unconsciously activated by your genuineness because it emphasizes their own inauthenticity. The brilliance correspondent. These are the uncommon persons who have accomplished their own psychological assignment and can encounter you at your dimension of complexity without requiring to absorb or reduce you. They celebrate your uncommonness while sustaining their own psychological independence. Jung uncovered something magnificent regarding uncommon personalities who discover to navigate connections deliberately. They become reflections that assist others perceive their own capability for psychological cultivation. The solution is discovering what Jung termed psychological distinction, the capability to recognize who is capable of genuine connection and who is pursuing something else from you. Yet here's what Jung comprehended that transforms everything. With psychological uncommonness arrives obligation. You're not simply distinctive for your own advantage. You're distinctive in support of human advancement. Jung maintained that persons possessing uncommon personalities function as connections between the unconscious and aware dimensions of human existence. Through your complexity, your inquiries, your rejection to embrace superficial responses, you assist humanity expand. This is why you cannot settle for conventional. This is why superficial relationships experience vacant. This is why you'd prefer be solitary than simulate. Your consciousness recognizes you possess assignment to accomplish, and that assignment demands genuineness, complexity, and bravery. Yet Jung also cautioned regarding what I term psychological expansion, the danger of maintaining that being uncommon generates you superior instead of simply accountable. The solution is containing both modesty and capability, comprehending that you're distinctive without maintaining others are less beneficial. Your perceptiveness isn't a vulnerability to be controlled. It's intelligence to be implemented. Your profundity isn't excessive. It's precisely what particular circumstances demand. Your rejection to settle isn't challenging. It's required for the advancement of awareness. Jung produced a remarkable forecast regarding uncommon personalities. As humanity advances, more persons will cultivate these qualities. What's uncommon currently will become more typical as our variety expands in psychological advancement. Yet that signifies you're not simply individually uncommon. You're evolutionarily significant. You embody what Jung termed the progressive boundary of human awareness. You're pioneering methods of existing that others will ultimately pursue. This viewpoint transforms everything regarding how you perceive your difficulties. Every instance you experienced like an alienated, you were genuinely investigating new region for human capability. Every instance you've been criticized for being excessive, you are demonstrating opportunities that intimidate restricted perspectives. Every instance you've selected genuineness over acceptance, you've enlarged what's achievable for human connection. Every instance you've rejected settling for superficial significance, you've elevated the standard for what existence can become. Jung comprehended that psychological advancement occurs through persons like you who reject accepting present restrictions as permanent. You're not simply existing your existence. You're enlarging what it signifies to be human. Yet this arrives with isolation. You're frequently traveling paths that few others have traveled. You're resolving difficulties that most persons don't even identify as difficulties. You're pursuing relationships that most persons don't maintain are achievable. Jung's ultimate understanding regarding uncommon personalities was both challenging and emancipating. You must discover to appreciate your uncommonness without requiring others to comprehend it. The objective isn't to generate everyone perceive how distinctive you are. The objective is embodying your capacity so completely that you become an existing demonstration of what's achievable when someone embraces their genuine character totally. This signifies accepting that some persons will never comprehend your complexity. Some will be intimidated by your inquiries. Some will desire to reduce your brilliance because it generates them uncomfortable with their own dimness. Yet Jung uncovered something magnificent regarding persons who completely embrace their psychological uncommonness. They become attractions for others who are prepared to embrace their own distinctiveness. You don't require everyone to comprehend you. You require discovering the few who can correspond your dimension of awareness and construct an existence with them. The existence requires your inquiries, your perceptiveness, your rejection to embrace restrictions as permanent. Yet you must present these capacities deliberately, strategically, sustainably. You must discover to be both capable and protective, both accessible and discriminating. Jung articulated, "The most frightening matter is accepting oneself totally. You're discovering to accomplish precisely that. And in accomplishing so, you're presenting others authorization to embrace themselves totally, too." Recall what Jung identified regarding extraordinarily uncommon personalities. The 8 indicators we've investigated aren't simply individual qualities. They're proof of what I term sophisticated psychological design. Jung articulated in his ultimate compositions, "The honor of existence is becoming your authentic self." Yet for persons like you, becoming your authentic self signifies accepting that you function at a dimension of psychological advancement that most persons never cultivate. Your emotional complexity isn't excessive perceptiveness. It's emotional intelligence functioning at sophisticated dimensions. Your continuous challenging isn't pessimism. It's awareness rejecting to embrace restrictions. Your self-reliance isn't separation. It's psychological independence. Your hyper-aware perception isn't suspicion. It's intuition operating as intended. Your desire for significance isn't impractical. It's your essence requiring coordination. Your configuration of transcending persons isn't coldness. It's advancement in operation. Your transformative existence isn't manipulation. It's genuineness generating environment for authenticity. Your unspecified function isn't confusion. Its capability pursuing communication. Should even 4 of these indicators resonated with you, you're not simply distinctive. You're component of what Jung maintained was humanity's subsequent evolutionary phase. You're one of the persons advancing our variety toward greater awareness, more profound authenticity, and more genuine relationship. Yes, it's isolating occasionally. Yes, it demands more bravery than most persons will ever require. Yet Jung maintained that persons like you are fundamental for humanity's psychological advancement. Your profundity isn't excessive. It's precisely what existence requires to eliminate its secure numbness. Your perceptiveness isn't vulnerability. It's capability that can detect what others overlook. Your rejection to settle isn't challenging. It's required for progress. Carl Jung devoted his existence investigating persons like you because he comprehended something significant. You're not simply existing your own existence. You're enlarging what it signifies to be human. The existence doesn't require you to be smaller, quieter, or more convenient. The existence requires you to be precisely what you are, psychologically uncommon and honored of it. Should you're prepared to completely embrace your psychological uncommonness and discontinue apologizing for qualities that generate you remarkable, comment below. I am evolutionary awareness in human configuration. Distribute this with someone who requires recalling their own psychological uncommonness. And should you desire to comprehend more regarding Jung's understandings into the shadow dimension of perceptiveness, examine my presentation on ultimate caution to empaths they're consuming on your brilliance, where I disclose Jung's most disturbing uncovering regarding how unconscious persons deplete the vitality of psychologically sophisticated persons. Subscribe because we're simply commencing to investigate the dimensions of what generates you remarkable. Recall, you're not excessive. The existence is insufficient. And Jung recognized that persons like you are the ones who transform that. Appreciation for observing. Perceive you in the subsequent dimension.